Have you ever looked at a piece of art and just felt that it's more than a pretty picture? You know, that it's holding up a mirror to its own time, reflecting not just beauty, but some deep, real anxiety. Well, that's exactly the story we're diving into today. How art went from being a perfect window to a very anxious mirror.
And really, that one idea, that's the heart of our whole story. We're going to go on a journey from a time when art was like this flawless window, showing us a perfect, ordered world, to a time when it became more like a warped mirror, reflecting a world that was fractured, uncertain, and just deeply anxious.
So our story kicks off in the High Renaissance. This was a time of just supreme confidence. People believed they'd cracked the code of the universe, and they were chasing harmony, balance, and this kind of divine, rational order in absolutely everything they made.
Now, to get their art, you have to get how they saw the world. And at the center of it all was this idea of the great chain of being. Think of it as the ultimate org chart for the entire universe. You've got God at the top, of course, then kings and queens right below, and then everyone and everything else had its own perfect little spot. It was a vision of complete, unshakable stability.
And this worldview was literally etched into their art. I mean, artists like Raphael and Leonardo da Vinci, they weren't just painting what they saw, they were painting a perfected version of it. They used their mastery of perspective, these perfectly balanced compositions, and calm, rational subjects to create a vision of absolute serene order. It was reality, but better. A window into a perfected world of shining beauty.
But what happens when that perfect, stable world starts to show some cracks? You know, when the certainties that held everything together begin to just crumble? Well, that's where our story takes a really dramatic turn. The very thing that powered the Renaissance, humanism, with its incredible questioning spirit, well, that started to challenge those old, rigid structures. People began to wonder if that great chain of being was really so unbreakable after all. As you can see, the foundation of that old order was literally crumbling. And all of a sudden, the world started to feel wobbly, unstable, deeply out of balance.
And art, being the mirror that it is, had no choice but to change right along with it. A whole new style popped up from this era of uncertainty, one that embraced this expressive, self-conscious, and, let's be honest, often bizarre style. It would later be called Mannerism, and it wasn't about perfection anymore. Oh no, it was all about anxiety.
And this chart, wow, it just lays out the whole transformation perfectly. Where the Renaissance was all about idealized beauty and logical, ordered space, Mannerism just dove headfirst into raw emotional intensity and embraced artifice and illusion. Serene order was out, and intense psychological struggle was in. This wasn't just an evolution, it was a total revolution in how people saw the world.
So here's the crucial thing to get. Mannerist artists started twisting and distorting the human body, on purpose. These weren't mistakes, they were making a statement. They were breaking the rules of nature to show a truth that was beyond nature, a kind of spiritual depth that simple, straightforward realism could never, ever capture.
Parmigiano's Madonna with the long neck is a fantastic example. Just look at her. Her neck is impossibly long, her fingers are so delicate and stretched. This is not a portrait of a real woman. That exaggeration is telling us she's something else entirely, an otherworldly presence, totally divine and elegant. The strangeness is the whole point.
And this turn inward, this focus on the internal world, it wasn't just happening in painting. It's the exact same kind of introspection and emotional depth we find in Shakespeare's most complex heroes. I mean, think about Hamlet, a guy defined by his internal turmoil. He's fighting these battles inside his own mind. Mannerist painters were capturing that exact same psychological struggle, just with paint on a canvas.
This new, artificial style, it wasn't just for religious art. In an age of instability, it became the perfect tool for projecting power. Rulers couldn't just rely on divine right anymore, they had to perform their power.
The world became a stage, and the king or queen was the star of the show. Every public appearance, every gesture, and especially every single portrait was this carefully calculated performance. It was all designed to project an image of absolute authority and unshakable control.
And this performance created a whole new language of power, one built entirely on symbols. Take Queen Elizabeth I, for example. She adopted what was called a mask of youth, basically a policy of rejuvenation, to project this image of immortal divinity. In paintings, she'd be holding a sieve to symbolize her virtue and chastity, or an orb to show her global dominion. Every single object was a word in a carefully crafted sentence about her absolute right to rule.
So these portraits, they became what we can call a meaning frame.
The goal was never to capture Elizabeth the person, the actual woman. It was to erase her, and in her place stood this public symbol of the state, all carefully curated to keep society together. A divine figure, both timeless and all-powerful.
As the age wore on, this fascination with artifice and hidden meanings went even further, leading to some of the most bizarre and honestly unforgettable art ever created. The mirror of society was now reflecting a really deep sense of disillusionment.
Okay, this is where things get really weird and really wonderful. Meet Giuseppe Arcimboldo. This guy took the idea of artifice to its absolute extreme. He embraced the grotesque, painting portraits not of flesh and blood, but made of flowers, fruits, books, even fish. These composite heads were a complete and total break from Renaissance harmony.
But these weren't just clever jokes. No, these witty, complex works hinted at a kind of moral confusion lurking just beneath the surface of the natural world. They suggested that nature itself was full of tricks and mysterious forces, kind of like the witches and ghosts you'd find in the tragedies of the time. The world, it seemed, was not nearly as orderly as everyone had once hoped.
And that, right there, is the ultimate message of Mannerism. In its distorted forms and its anxious energy, it's a visual record of just how fragile and temporary human efforts really are. It perfectly captured that feeling that we are all just subject to the totally unpredictable vicissitudes of fate. This was art for an age that had completely lost its certainty.
And just like that, the journey was complete. Art had taken society from a world of shining beauty and rational hope, that window to perfection, and plunged it right into a space of anxiety, introspection, and in the end, great disillusionment. The mirror was now reflecting the world's own worried, fractured face right back at it. And all this brings us to a final thought, doesn't it? If the art of the 16th century was a mirror reflecting its deepest anxieties about a changing world, well, it really makes you wonder, what is our art reflecting today? What will future generations see about our hopes, our fears, and our own sense of order or chaos when they look in the mirror of our time?